Welcome to Guilty Pleasure Stories channel that we hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. When I think about the start, it feels like a different lifetime. Bag and I were so young. We had nothing but each other, and at the time that felt like everything. He was my first real love, the kind that makes you believe nothing could ever go wrong. He made me laugh, made me feel safe. We'd stay up for hours talking about our dreams, our future, the kind of life we'd build together back then. It seems so simple. But life isn't simple. It changes whether you're ready for it or not. We got married young, too young. Maybe at first it was wonderful. We were happy, and for years I clung to those memories whenever things got tough. I told myself it was just a rough patch that every couple goes through ups and downs. But I didn't realize how much we were drifting apart until it felt like there was an ocean between us. The little things that used to make us laugh turned into irritations. The promises he used to keep became afterthoughts, and the connection we once had. It started to slip through my fingers, no matter how hard I tried to hold on. I don't think Bag ever noticed the change, or maybe he just didn't want to. I tried to talk to him to tell him how I was feeling, but every time he'd brush it off. "Why do you always bring this up?" He'd say, "You're making me feel like I'm not good enough." I didn't want to hurt him, but how could I not bring it up? How could I keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't? I loved him. I still do in a way, but love isn't always enough. No one tells you that. No one prepares you for the day when the person you built your life with starts to feel like a stranger. This is my story. A story of how I lost myself, how I made choices. I never thought I would. Choices that I'll carry with me forever, and maybe sharing it will help me find some answers. Or at least some peace. Back then, Bag was my world. He wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend, my partner in everything. We had this beautiful, effortless way of being together, like we were made for each other. He'd do the sweetest little things. Bring me flowers just because, leave me love notes on the mirror, even surprise me with my favorite snacks. After a long day, those gestures, they meant everything to me. They made me feel seen. But somewhere along the way, those little things stopped. Life happened. Stress crept in, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the man who once went out of his way to make me smile seemed to forget how it wasn't just the flowers or the notes. It was the way he looked at me, the way he used to light up when he saw me. One day I woke up and realized it was like he'd stopped seeing me altogether. It wasn't always bad in the beginning. It was everything I could have asked for: passionate, tender, exciting. But over the years something changed. Our time together became mechanical routine. It felt like we were checking a box rather than sharing a moment. He'd finish quickly, almost apologetically, and then roll over like it was nothing. Every time I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than I did before we even started. I tried to talk to him about it, about how I felt like I didn't matter anymore. I wasn't angry. I was just desperate to feel that connection again, but every time I brought it up, he'd shut me down. "I hate how you keep bringing this up." He'd say, "It makes me feel like shit," and I'd drop it, not wanting to hurt him. But where did that leave me, holding all these feelings? All this pain with no one to share it with? I didn't want to be the kind of person who nagas or complains, so I stopped bringing it up. I stopped asking him to see me, to want me, but the feelings didn't go away. They just sat there festering until it felt like a part of me was slowly dying. I told myself it was just a phase, that things would get better. We'd been through so much together. Surely we could get through this too. But deep down I think I knew things weren't going to change, and I was too afraid to admit it, not to him, not even to myself. Before I get into this part of the story, I want to take a moment to ask you something. If you've been listening and find yourself drawn into my story, I'd love it if you could take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even share your own thoughts or experiences in the comments. Stories like mine are hard to tell, but they're even harder to go through alone. Your support means everything. Okay, let's continue. It was a day like any other, or so I thought. I was trying to lug this ridiculous box inside, muttering to myself about why on earth I thought I could handle it alone. That's when I heard his voice. George, my neighbor. I'd seen him around a few times, but we'd never really spoken beyond a polite wave. He offered to help, and I almost said no, but something about the way he smiled. I don't know. I let him. It wasn't just that he helped. It was the way he talked to me, like I mattered, like he wanted to know me. We joked about how I clearly needed to hit the gym if I was going to keep ordering heavy things online for the first time in what felt like forever. I found myself laughing, really laughing. It wasn't a big moment. It wasn't earth-shattering or life-changing, but it was something I hadn't felt in a long-time connection. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt seen. I didn't realize how much I'd missed that feeling until it was right in front of me. It's strange how something so small can linger in your mind. A kind word, a shared laugh. I told myself it was nothing, just a friendly neighbor being nice. But deep down, I think I already knew that moment would stay with me and George. Well, he wasn't just a neighbor anymore. He became a friend, someone I could talk to, someone who listened. And that was the beginning of everything. It started so innocently, a cup of coffee here, a conversation there. George always seemed to be around, like he knew when I needed someone without me ever saying it. He didn't just listen. He really heard me, every story I told, every small frustration I shared. He remembered it all, and slowly, without even realizing it, I started looking forward to those moments. It wasn't just the conversations. He was always willing to help. Little things that Bag never seemed to notice or didn't have time for. Fixing a curtain, repairing a squeaky door, even mowing my lawn. When I was too overwhelmed to do it myself, he made it all feel effortless, like it was no big deal. But to me it was everything. The more time I spent with George, the more I realized how much I'd missed feeling cared for. Not just in big, obvious ways, but in the small, quiet gestures that tell you someone is paying attention. Someone who notices you. At first I told myself it was just a friendship. George was kind, thoughtful, and easy to talk to, everything I needed in a friend. But deep down I think I knew it wasn't just a friendship, and that scared me. I didn't want to admit it to myself or anyone else, but the truth was impossible to ignore. George made me feel something I hadn't felt in years, and the more I tried to push it down, the more it grew. It had been one of those nights again. Another argument. Another round of him brushing me off like I was overreacting. I don't even remember what started it, something small. Probably it was always the small things, but they weren't small to me, not anymore. I didn't plan to talk to him. I didn't even know what I'd say, but when he waved me over, I went. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. Maybe I was looking for someone to understand. Either way, I sat down. He asked if I was okay, and before I could stop myself, it all came pouring out: the fights, the loneliness, the way Bag and I felt like strangers living under the same roof. George didn't interrupt, he just listened, really listened. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, I didn't feel judged or dismissed. I felt heard. He told me about his own struggles, the times he'd felt invisible to someone he loved. It was like he was saying everything I was too scared to admit to myself, and somehow in that moment it didn't feel like we were just neighbors anymore. We were the people trying to make sense of our own broken pieces. I told myself I shouldn't be there, that I should have gone home. The moment Bag stopped yelling, but I didn't. I stayed, and we talked for hours about everything. About nothing. The kind of conversation I hadn't had with Bag in years. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I was worth something, like I was more than just the person who made dinner and kept the house running. For the first time in so long I felt wanted, and I didn't want that feeling to end. I wish I could say it was a mistake, that I didn't know what I was doing, but that's not true. I knew exactly what I was doing, and in that moment I wasn't thinking about the consequences. I wasn't thinking about Bag or the vows I'd made. I was just thinking about how good it felt to be wanted again when it was over. I didn't feel relief or satisfaction. I felt heavy, like I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. But at the same time I couldn't deny the truth. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, and that scared me more than anything. That morning felt like a dream, a bad one. My body was in bed, but my mind was still at George's house. I kept replaying everything. Every word, every touch, and every time I thought about it, the guilt hit me like a wave. It wasn't just what I'd done. It was the fact that Bag had no idea he was getting ready for work, like it was just another day, completely oblivious to the person I'd become. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that it would never happen again. But deep down I knew better. It wasn't that simple. Nothing ever is. The moment I saw Bag that morning, I realized how far apart we drifted. I didn't feel like his wife anymore. I didn't feel like anything at all. George's message caught me off guard, but not in the way it should have. I should have felt disgusted with myself, ashamed, and I did a little, but mostly I felt wanted. I felt seen, and that terrified me. I thought deleting the message would help, that if I didn't respond, I could move on and pretend it never happened, but it didn't work. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way he looked at me, the way he listened, the way he touched me. George made me feel alive, in a way I hadn't in years, but I knew it was wrong. I knew I needed to stop. The question was how. George's house became my escape. It wasn't just a place. It felt like home. The kind of home I hadn't felt in years when I was there. It was like the rest of the world disappeared. Bag, the guilt, the arguments, all of it. I could just be me. I started spending more and more time at George's place. At first it was only when Bag was at work or out of town, but eventually I found myself making excuses just to go. It wasn't about avoiding Bag anymore. It was about wanting to be with George, to feel that sense of warmth and connection that I'd been missing for so long. I told myself I was just feeling a void, that George was giving me something Bag couldn't. But the truth was harder to admit. The truth was, I was starting to forget about Bag altogether. When I was with George, it was like he didn't exist. And when I was with Bag, all I could think about was George. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't even know if I wanted to. I knew I had to stop. It wasn't just the guilt anymore. It was everything. The sneaking around, the constant lies, the fear of being caught. It was eating me alive, so I decided to pull away. I stopped answering his texts, stopped stepping outside when I knew he'd be around. I thought if I put enough distance between us, the feelings would fade. But they didn't, and neither did George. I should have gone inside, pretended I didn't see him. But something in me froze, like I was caught in a moment. I couldn't escape. He asked me if I was okay, if he'd done something wrong, and I wanted to tell him the truth, that it wasn't him. It was me, but the words stuck in my throat. I told him we couldn't keep doing this, that it wasn't right, and he just looked at me. Not angry, not hurt, just calm, like he already knew what I was going to say, but didn't believe I could follow through. I thought walking away would make it easier, that putting up a wall would make everything go back to normal, but it didn't. If anything, it made the pull stronger, because deep down I didn't. Caroline had been my best friend for years. She knew me better than anyone, which is probably why I avoided telling her for so long. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. The guilt, the confusion, the constant battle in my head. It was too much. I needed to tell someone, and Caroline was the only person I could trust. I told her everything about Bag, about George, about how lonely I'd felt for so long. The words tumbled out like a dam breaking, and once I started, I couldn't stop. Every detail, every feeling, every choice I regretted. I laid it all out. Caroline didn't yell or judge me, but she didn't let me off the hook either. She looked me in the eye and asked, "What were you thinking, Myrtle?" And for the first time I realized I didn't have an answer. I told her I wasn't thinking, that I just felt so alone for so long. And George made me feel like I mattered again. Caroline didn't mince words. She told me I was playing with fire, that I couldn't keep living this double life. She asked me the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. What do you want, Myrtle, to fix your marriage or to walk away? Talking to Caroline was like ripping off a Band-Aid. She didn't sugarcoat anything, and she didn't let me hide from the truth. I couldn't keep living this way. I had to make a choice, but what scared me most was that I didn't know if I could make the right one. I wasn't sure if I should do this, share my story with all of you, but I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know where else to turn. Maybe someone out there has been through something similar. Maybe you can help me figure out what to do. Bag and I met when we were just teenagers. Back then, everything was easy. We were in love and the world felt like it revolved around us. He was my first for so many things. My first real K***S, my first love, my first everything. We got married young, full of hope, and for a while it was amazing. But things changed. It wasn't one big moment, just little things that added up over time. He stopped noticing the small things, like the way I smiled when he surprised me with flowers, or how much I loved the notes he used to leave on the fridge. And then there was the intimacy. It wasn't just about us **X. It was about feeling connected, feeling like I mattered, and lately I haven't felt that. That's when George came into the picture. He's my neighbor. It started so innocently, a friendly conversation here, a small favor there. But somewhere along the way it became more. He made me feel seen, cared for, wanted. And before I knew it, I had crossed a line. I never thought I would. I know what I did was wrong. I'm not here to justify it or make excuses. I need help understanding why I did it, and how to fix the mess I've made of my life. After that night with George, the first, told myself it would never happen again, but it's not that simple. He's always there, kind, attentive, saying all the things I wish Bag would say. And every time I try to pull away, he finds a way to draw me back in. I feel like I'm stuck in this cycle and I don't know how to break free. I've tried to focus on my marriage to rebuild what Bag and I had. I planned a special dinner, tried to talk to him about how I'm feeling, but it's like he's not interested, and the more he pulls away, the more I find myself wanting to run back to George. I hate myself for it, but I don't know what else to do. That's why I'm here sharing all of this with you. I don't have the answers and I feel so lost. Do I try harder to fix things with Bag? Do I tell him the truth about George? Or do I walk away from both of them and try to start over? I don't want to hurt Bag. He doesn't deserve that. But I also can't keep living like this, feeling like I'm being torn in the. If you've been in a situation like this, or even if you haven't, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you were in my shoes? How do you choose between doing what's right and following your heart? Please let me know in the comments. I'm really struggling and I could use all the advice I can get. And if this story resonates with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your own story in the comments. I know I'm not the only one struggling, and maybe by sharing, we can help each other find some answers. Sharing this feels like tearing open a wound, but maybe it's what I need to heal. I don't know what the future holds, whether I'll stay, leave, or find some other path. All I know is that I can't keep pretending. Everything is okay, and maybe, just maybe, hearing from all of you will help me find the clarity I'm so desperate for. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me.